All right, welcome everybody to the North Carolina Watershed Stewardship Network webinar. I think this is our third webinar since our COVID thing started happening. This one is funding opportunities for your water work. And this follows from our last webinar we had where we got a lot of feedback in our chat rooms about how people wanted more information. They wanted to talk more about funding their watershed efforts and grant writing and how to build capacity. So we, and I say Lauren Daniel and Michelle Raque and I, and Maya Koff-Schultz with TJ Cog, put our heads together and came up with a webinar with some really fabulous guests. So just a few things to get started. Let's see, I will share the agenda in the chat. It will be a Google link. Let's see. So I'm going to put it in right now. And I imagine once this is a recording, we'll put that agenda in the description to go. So if you're watching this later, you'll be able to access that agenda as well. So what we're going to do today is we've got some introductory questions with Lauren, who will introduce herself in a minute. And speakers, we have some wonderful speakers from North Carolina. All our funding sources that we're hearing about today are from North Carolina. So you can only apply if you are a North Carolina resident. I'm sorry if you are here from another state, but I would suggest you look at your own resources. But if you are in North Carolina, here's your warning that these are North Carolina specific funding sources. So we'll give each of our speakers 5 minutes to talk. And then we'll do a panel discussion for questions and answers of the speakers. And then we will go into breakout discussions. And we found that people appreciate the opportunity to talk with their peers and build their network and learn about other people's successes. So that will be time to share lessons and challenges that you've encountered in your funding adventures for your community. And then we'll quickly do report outs and wrap up. We think that we'll probably go till 11:15 today, which is a little shorter than what we advertised, but gives you a little more time to get out and enjoy those woods around you, like one of our participants is. He's showing us a wetland now. So that's pretty awesome. Just a quick background about the Stewardship Network for those of you who have not been to one of our events before. The Stewardship Network came about a number of years ago, probably about 10 years ago. A group of watershed professionals sat down around coffee and said, well, how can we support people working to protect and improve water resources in their communities? And one of our colleagues at the time called those folks watershed champions. Who's the champions in the community who are doing their best to protect the water and get people engaged with that? And we came up with some needs assessments, lots of surveys to watershed professionals, as well as people who volunteer for watershed groups, and learned that there was a desire for a network for people to learn from each other across the state and share resources and basically help support this group of folks who are trying to make a difference in their communities. So we had a steering committee that led the group for a number of years, starting in 2013, and made great strides with a number of trainings and online resources. I'm going to drop our website in the chat so you can explore that on your own time if you're not familiar with it. Here we go. Anyway, we just moved our website over to the Water Resource Research Institute, where I work. The Stewardship Network originally started as a collaboration between WRI and UNC Institute for the Environment, and now it's coordinated by WRI and North Carolina Division of Water Resources in collaboration. So we moved most of the resources that was on our cloud-based site to the WRI site. So you can find most of those. There's a lot of funding resources. There's actually I just updated it. There's an Excel spreadsheet with a number of grant opportunities listed in addition to the ones you'll hear about today. And I can't promise that it's 100% updated with the dates, but there's a lot of sources there under our resources tab for you to peruse. As far as the rest of today, if you'll stay on mute until it's time for discussions, that would be very helpful so we could hear our speakers. I think that's about it for me, Lauren, unless you can think of anything I missed, or Michelle, did I miss anything? All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren to get us moving here. And here's my colleague, Lauren Daniel, with the North Carolina Division of Water Resources Education.
Oh, yeah, great. Thanks, Christy. Well, just like Christy said, I work for the Division of Water Resources. I provide educational outreach and educational support for teachers and pretty much anyone throughout the whole state that's trying to provide water education. So some of my programs you may have heard of is Project WET, North Carolina Stream Watch, and It's Our Water. Those are my three main programs, but I have also recently started up the North Carolina Climate Education Network, as well as we have a little network that I see some familiar faces. I see Edgar Miller here, the North Carolina Creek Week Network. Some of y'all attend our talks there too. So any other information, if that sounds interesting to you, I will put my email in the chat and we can connect. So anyway, my portion here, we're going to do a few polls, get a temperature check, if you will, for everyone in the room. And then we're going to, actually, I don't want to forget, before we do the speakers, I want Michelle Raquet to introduce herself as well. Is now a good time to do that, Michelle? Can I toss it over to you real quick before the train starts?
Sure. I think you already did, so thank you, Lauren. So Christy Vitchin, my name, as well as Lauren. I'm Michelle Raquet. I'm with the Division of Water Resources in the Basin Planning branch, and I came back to work with Basin Planning about 5 years ago now. I got pulled into Watershed Stewardship Network, which is I really enjoy, because when I first started with Division of Water Resources, I learned from all the stakeholders out in the basin. So this is a great network of people, a great learning opportunity, a great opportunity to resource share, and that's kind of what my overall, I don't know if it's charge you'd call it, but that's kind of what I like to do with the basin planning role, is to make those connections and get that bigger picture out there. So that's what I do with basin planning. So Lauren, I will throw it back to you now. And I really enjoy working with, I know a lot of you on this call, and I enjoy working with all of you. So.
Yeah, definitely. And thanks, Michelle. Sorry, I didn't mean to throw it to you unexpectedly, but I didn't want to miss a chance.
Thank you.
So before I launch these polls, I am curious if you have never attended a Watershed Stewardship Network meeting before, if you could just mention it in the chat, that would be very insightful to learn how many of y'all are first timers. And here we go. So some of our polls are coming here. Here's the first one. What is your priority for the next hour? We want to hear kind of what's your buy-in for being here. Oh, great. Thanks, Jennifer. I see you in the chat. All right, give you another second or two. 70% have participated. All right, 3 more seconds and then we'll go to the next one. Let's see. This is great. All right, and hit send, and I'm going to end poll. Oh, look at all the first timers. This is great. Okay, so share results. All right, so it looks like most of you are here for the topic, and that is fantastic. That means we're doing our job. So finding grant opportunities that are relevant to your needs, that's awesome. No one's here for the free food. Great, because there isn't any. And to hear what everyone's up to. That's great. What I'm here for personally is what is everyone up to. All right, next one is let's hear about your experience with writing grants. Let's see. Here's the next roll of poll questions. How have you funded your watershed or community efforts? And then there's another question that says, what's your priority? Oh, uh-oh. You don't have, well, just, that's a duplicate, sorry. I love watching the answers roll in. I'm so sorry that y'all don't get to see the answers roll in here. I'm going to share them about in about 5 more seconds. Go ahead and vote. Okay, enough time to read it. All right, go ahead and hit submit. All right. Here we go. Let's see if I can share them out. Can you see them? Hope so. All right, so looks like 67% have done federal grants, like the 319 grants. Half of you are saying land and water fund. That's excellent. And we're also going to be hearing from the Department of Justice with their EEG grant, which a third of y'all seem familiar with. This is good, great information. Half of you have used foundation grants before. Excellent. A small portion have done membership dues. That's interesting. Good to know. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. Unless I'm missing something, Christy, don't let me forget anything.
I don't think so.
Christy keeps me straight.
Yep, I would just, my only thing is that we make sure we introduce Sarah before 10:20.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Let's
thanks.
do one last thing here. This is the last question I'll ask. Excuse me. So grant writing confidence. We want to hear how confident you are with grant writing. How you fall into that spectrum. Be honest. This is anonymous.
Did you put it up there? It looks like it went away. I'm not seeing it.
Uh-oh. Did it go away? Oh, I'm so sorry. Hang on. Oh, Zoom has a button for that. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I don't think I even pressed anything. All right. Oh, this is a good mix. All right, go ahead and vote, and I'll give you about 5 more seconds on that. Looks like most of y'all are falling right into the middle. All right, I want to end the poll in 3, 2, 1. Oop, sharing results. So we have a nice spread here of folks, but pretty much everyone, it looks like, falls right into they could use a little help. Only a handful are very confident about this. So when we break into our breakout groups later on, we definitely want to hear from those of you that said you were very confident. And we also want to hear the questions and challenges from going on with others. So use that time as we get there to help yourself and find resources and support. So thank you for participating in that. That's a good way to kind of know who's in the room. So now we're going to, Christy, can I go ahead and introduce Sarah?
Yes, thank you for that great introduction.
So Sarah is our brave first presenter today. So Sarah, thank you so much for being here. I want to give her a brief introduction. Sarah Zambonne is an Assistant Attorney General at the North Carolina Department of Justice, where she administers the EEG, or the Environmental Enhancement Grant Program. Prior to joining the Department of Justice in 2018, Sarah was Senior Deputy County Attorney in Western North Carolina, where she litigated child welfare, code enforcement, and land use cases. As well as drafting ordinances and advising staff on all land use, zoning, and environmental issues. Sarah holds a master's degree in public policy from Johns Hopkins University and a law degree from University of North Carolina. We are so excited to have you here today, Sarah. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, and I'll give you a 1-minute warning if you might need one, but take it away. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me to speak to you all. Some of your names I recognize from our applications, but many of you I don't. I know EEG is not a program that everyone is familiar with. So I'm really excited to talk to you today. I will. Can you see my slide? Can I have a thumbs up if you can see my slide?
Yes.
Yes, great. All right, step 1 completed. I've successfully shared my slide. At DOJ, we use Teams. We don't use Zoom a lot, so I'm never as familiar when we switch platforms. So the EEG program is a little different than some of the other programs you'll hear about today, in that it is the quintessential public-private partnership. These are private dollars. These are not public dollars. None of the EEG funds are taxpayer dollars. EEG Grants is a 25-year agreement with Smithfield Foods that started in 2000, where they provide us $2 million a year to the Attorney General's office. And the Attorney General's office, in a competitive process, distributes that money across the state. So you'll see from my first point, it says it's ending in 2027, which doesn't make math sense, but that is not a typo. Some of the funds, due to the Great Recession in 2008, some of the funds were delayed, and therefore the agreement was extended a few years. So we're anticipating the program will end around 2027. So it is again, so we are in 2021. We have been giving grants out since about 2000, 2001. So this is a 20-year program. The objectives have varied slightly over the years, but in general, it's always been to protect and preserve air, water, and land quality in North Carolina. Our eligibility, Christy mentioned earlier that you had to be a citizen of North Carolina to get our grant funds. Our program's a little different in that the work has to be done in North Carolina. The project has to take place in North Carolina, but we do get national organizations that will apply, national organizations that may be seated in a different state. As long as the work is being done here, we can fund it. So eligibility, nonprofit organizations, government entities, local governments, state agencies, and institutes of higher learning. We have a preference stated in the Smithfield Agreement for projects in Eastern North Carolina, and that's because that's where Smithfield has most of their operations in the state. This year, we added a preference that I was very excited about, and I hope we continue to do it in the future, for underserved and overburdened communities as defined by the EPA, so to answer some of the environmental justice needs across our state. So those can either be organizations that serve those communities or projects in those communities. These are 3-year grants. The minimum grant is $5,000. The maximum grant is $500,000. The types of things we provide is pretty broad. So we provide money for land acquisitions, for conservation easements. A lot of our land has been acquired and then made part of public parks. We do construction, restoration, and remediation projects. That is a lot of the water restoration, a lot of wetlands, a lot of stormwater. And then we provide funding for research. And then we provide small grants, which is a thing we started a few years ago, which is grants that are less than $50,000 or less. So it's for groups who might have most of their funding, but are still missing that little piece. Or for smaller projects, where the larger application becomes too overwhelming for folks, we wanted an easier process for people who needed smaller grants. Because it wouldn't be fair to require the same kind of documentation and labor, as many of you know who write grants, how long these things take. We didn't think it was necessarily fair to make the same kind of work for a $500,000 grant as a $10,000 grant. So we've created a slightly different process. Here are some of the successes of our program. In the 20 years, we've helped preserve over 31,000 acres. In the initial years of our program, one of the bigger projects was rehabilitating abandoned hog lagoons, where you take an abandoned hog lagoon and then rehabilitate it and take out all the stuff and then make it into a nice grassy field. So we did that with about 249 abandoned hog lagoons across the state. And then a third of our grants improve public spaces. I think Lauren said, maybe I have a minute. I'm almost done. I'm so close. So the last 2 years, our cycle has been, RFP is released in late spring. They are due around Memorial Day. This year it was late June in that period. And then the awards are announced late fall. So for this time, we're still making our award decisions for this year. However, as many of you know, many of you probably have not heard of our program before. The easiest way to find out about our program is to send me your email at eeg@ncdoj.gov. And then we can add you to our listserv. Our listserv is always the first people who ever find out about when our grants are coming out. We send them the RFP, we announce the awards, we make a few other announcements during the year. And the other request I would put in is that we're also always looking for reviewers. And so if you are interested in this program, but and you have expertise in this area, but you're not planning on submitting a grant proposal, if you could email us, because we're always also looking for people to review the applications for us, because we do have a committee who reviews them before internally those decisions are made. And on the bottom here is just a map of all the projects that we've done statewide over the 20 years. The different colors mean the different kinds of projects. I show this to people because a lot of times people are put off by the preference for Eastern North Carolina, but as you see, it really is a statewide program. So I have to sign off in a little bit because I have a meeting, and I know you have other presenters, but if anybody has any questions, please email me here and please join our listserv. Thank you.
Hey, Sarah, if it's okay with you, we do have time for one, maybe two, probably one question, if anyone has one.
Well, Lauren, there was one that showed up in the chat, and that question was about, was the EEG only for the Neuse River watershed applicants? But from your map, it looks like it's not required, but it's preferred.
They're not even just, it's the preference is for Eastern North Carolina. But again, that's a preference, all things being equal. We got as you can see from the map, we got a lot of projects that are funded across the state. Because again, it also depends on the quality of the project and other factors that we look at.
Thank you.
Great question. One more quick one, anyone? Okay, we're going to keep the train rolling. And if you do have a question, jot it down so you don't forget it, and we'll have time to come back to it. Let's see, our next presenter is Kelsey Rowland. Kelsey has been with the 205J grant coordinator for about 2.5 years now. And she also assists with the 319 grant that we're going to hear about afterwards. Before her position, she graduated from Duke's in a Master's of Environmental Management program with a concentration in water resource management, and spent 2 years with an environmental consulting firm in Delaware. So Kelsey, if you want to take it away, talking about the 205J grant.
Yes, happy to. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, I'm gonna share my presentation.
And Kelsey, I'll let you know when you have about a minute left, okay?
Okay, thank you. All right, so the Section 205J Clean Water Act grant is a federal grant for water quality planning, and the eligible entities are exclusively councils of government. You can see on the map in the bottom the areas for the councils of government. And if you're not a council of government, but you're a local municipality or watershed group, you can certainly team up with your local councils of government to work on one of these projects. The current level of funding for the grant is around $290,000 for the state, and 40% of that we're required to pass through to the councils of government. We're passing through far more than that, I think closer to 70% right now. But as you can tell, it's a smaller pot of money than some of the other grants. But their average project cost is around $18,000 per project. And match is preferred, but it's not required for this grant. And your project has to be finished within 18 months. And there's no other eligibility besides it being water quality planning and being for a council of government. You can do preventative work. You're not required to have an impaired water body for this grant. The authorized project types under the grant are to identify point source and non-point source measures, protect and restore, develop implementation plans, and determining the nature, extent, and causes of water quality problems. What that looks like, a lot of our projects are stormwater mapping, figuring out where your stormwater infrastructure is, the condition of your infrastructure, and then developing usually a maintenance plan to address any issues. Education initiatives, here you can see a septic repair workshop that we funded in the Western North Carolina. Regional planning initiatives, for example, Jordan Lake One Water, you may be familiar with, but any sort of regional knowledge sharing project would be included if you're dealing at like a watershed level and working with other municipalities and counties. And then 9 element plans, which I will give more information on in just a second. If you want to see more specifics about these project types and how they're carried out and what a project looks like, you can go on to the 205J website and you'll see these case studies which provide more information on all of those. For the 9 element plans, you can see the components here, and that is also included in those case studies. Basically, you're going to do general watershed characteristics, figure out what your impairment is and what likely sources are, and then identify some measures to address the impairment. We're also developing at the division a watershed action plan, which is an online version of a 9 element plan. It includes not only these 9 minimum elements you can see that EPA requires, but also some other components as well that you may find helpful. And if you have any more information about that and how to get started for developing a watershed action plan, you feel free to contact me and I'll let you know more about that. So the grant cycle, the RFP is released in mid-July and the applications are due around mid-September. In October, we have project selection. There's about 10 of us in the Division of Water Resources that review the grants and select projects by the end of October, and then those projects would start in early July. Here you can see how we've distributed projects across the state for the past 11 years. We funded at least 1 project in each of the council of government areas, with more you can see in the Piedmont, but we're trying to reach out to more of these COGs that haven't historically participated and building their capacity and interest in the program as well. What happens is some of them don't have water quality planners or water resource planners, so they tend to have fewer applications and need more help with applications. But if you want more information, sorry.
You got it. One more minute. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. And if you want more information about it, you can check it out on our website, 205J, under the Division Water Resources. There's a link to subscribe to the listserv here, but you can also feel free to email me with any questions, or I can add you to the listserv.
Great. Thank you so much, Kelsey. And if you have questions for Kelsey, I saw some in the chat. We're going to keep it moving to Rishi now, and we will come back to these questions. So keep them coming, okay? So, and thank you so much, Kelsey. That was a great presentation and description. So next, we're going to switch it over to Rishi. Rishi Bastakoti is the 319 grant coordinator for North Carolina. He has been working in this position for 3 years now. He has over a decade of experience in grant management and internationally funded projects in watershed management, natural resources management, climate change, and rural livelihoods. He holds a PhD in environmental governance from the University of Calgary in Canada and a master's in tropical forestry and management from the Technical University of Dresden, Germany. Rishi, take it away. We look forward to hearing from you.
And we can see your slides. We can also see your next slide up. So I don't know if you want to change your view or not. Either way is fine.
Hey, Rishi, you are muted. We can't quite hear you.
Okay, just a moment. Okay, can you hear me now?
We hear you.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. Today, I will be briefly talking about the 319 grant program, project eligibility, timelines, and grant selection process. It seems most of you have already heard about 319 program. It's not new for most of the participants today. This is a federal grant program authorized by Section 319 of Clean Water Act, and US EPA provides the grant to all the states, and this is essential source of support to control non-point source pollutions at the state level. And 319 program follows watershed approach in tackling the non-point source pollution in various landscapes of the state. And this is a voluntary and stakeholder driven program to achieve water quality goals, and we don't support the regulatory compliance activities. And now I will talk some key points about the project eligibilities. And state agencies, local and regional governments, municipalities, university, and not-for-profit organizations are eligible for this grant. And 319 program supports on-ground implementation of the approved plans only. Kelsey already talked about the 9-element plans and the eligible plans for the 319 grant programs. We support to implement the DWR approved plans only, and all the NPS categories are eligible for the project. And unlike 205J program, 319 program needs 40% non-federal match, and these match can be cash or in kind, but they need to be implemented within the project frame. And projects are limited to 3 years because of the grant cycle. And as I already mentioned, regulatory compliance activities are not eligible under 319 funding. And we fund the project all over the state. And project award range from roughly 50,000 to 300,000, but we don't have any cap for the higher limit. And one of the key points that needs to be considered before applying for this fund, there needs to be impaired water, and it needs to be listed in the most recent integrated report within the recent 2 reports. And there should be 9 elements watershed restoration plan, and the project needs to implement the 9 elements or equivalent plans. If you don't have 9 element plans, but you think you have the qualified plans. You can submit the plan and fill out the 9 elements checklist form to us, and we will verify whether it will be eligible, and we will let you know whether you will be eligible to apply for the 319 grant. And now let's talk about the timeline and grant selection process. We follow a very rigorous selection process. By the end of January, the RFP call will be out, and the uniqueness of this program is the applicants can submit the draft proposal for the feedback, and our team of experts will be happy to provide the feedback on the draft proposal. And by first week of May, you can submit the final proposal, and we have interagency expert review team, and the review team reviews the project and ask the question for the grantees, and we also invite the applicants for the interview, and the review team sit together and we make the decision in a consensus. You can see the pictures in the slide. Unfortunately, these are from 2 years back. For last 2 years, we had to do virtually, and we didn't have the opportunity to sit together. And what makes a good 319 proposal? These are some of the key points. The projects needs to be specific and that conforms to approved 9 elements restoration plan. And the narrative is concise, clear, and the implementation plan is fully developed, because we want to see the implementation of the 9 elements plans to fix the impairment that's caused by the non-point source pollution. And the partnership is one of the key for the success of the program. So we want to see the clear role described for the grantee and partners, and robust partnership is desirable for the program. And another part is budget. The budget is realistic and it offers strong match, especially we consider only the non-federal match. And another key point is these funds should be regarded as the seed money to initiate non-point source pollution control efforts, but we cannot fund for the very long time. So sustainability of the program is the key while you are applying the projects. And another important point is that currently EPA has put environmental justice as a top priority. We have already considered these elements in our proposal review, but keep in mind that the projects needs to maximize the benefits to economically disadvantaged and environmentally impacted communities. That's one of the key thing that's quite new that needs to be considered to develop a very competitive proposal.
Under a minute, Rishi.
Okay, I think I'm good. Today I try to touch key elements in a brief. If you have more questions, you can find more information in our website. And if you have not signed for the 319 listserv, please sign up for that. We'll provide the upcoming grant opportunities and other grant opportunities through the listserv. And if you have any specific questions, please feel free to contact me or non-point source planning supervisor Rishi Gannon. We'll be happy to provide the information. Sometimes we might need to also consult with the EPA for a specific question. We'll be happy to provide the information you ask. Thank you.
Thanks, Rishi. That was great. And I know some folks will have some questions for you. We will pick those up in just a minute. We're going to keep things rolling over to Amin Davis now. Now, Amin gave me a short and a long bio. And if you don't know Amin, I'm going to just give the long bio because I just want you to know who Amin is. He's awesome. So Amin was born and raised in New Haven, Connecticut, but he obtained a BS degree in marine and environmental science from Hampton University in Virginia, and a master's in zoology from NC State University. Amin is an environmental scientist with 22 years of professional experience conducting environmental and water resource management work in public, private, and nonprofit sectors across 9 states in the Southeast and mid-Atlantic regions. His work has included watershed improvement and restoration activities, the integration of geographic information systems and GPS into environmental assessments, and regulatory permitting coordination. What a great bio. And fun fact, Amin has been able to work and or play in all 17 of the river basins in our state. So it's a great fun fact. Amin, take it away. Tell us about your program, the Water Resources Development Grant.
All right, thank you very much, Lauren. Should have done the short bio, but I appreciate the love, and I also want to acknowledge the WSN crew for coordinating this workshop. And it's good to see a lot of familiar faces and names in the chat. So I'm also often challenged with trying to get my share my screen, but just let me know if you see it, and we'll go from there. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. We also see like the next slide as well. But
Oh goodness. All right.
if you want to try and troubleshoot that, you can, or whatever.
Okay. You know what I'm going to do? Instead of sharing the presentation, I'm just going to share the PDF, and it'll be a lot easier that way. But y'all are going to miss out on the cool animations I had in the PowerPoint, but maybe next time. Okay, can y'all see this?
We see it, but not maximized on your screen.
Oh goodness.
If you go to the PowerPoint, you could probably pick at the top display settings when you hit play.
Sorry, y'all, you would have think after 2-3 years of using Zoom that I would have this figured out, but I'm not quite there yet.
That's okay. We expect this with Zoom. I've never had a meeting that
no, it's purely user error. Can y'all see this?
Yeah, if you go to the top on display settings, I think you can choose. There you go. Perfect.
Okay. Sorry. All right. Sorry about that. I know I've cut into my time, so I'll just jump into it. In terms of the Water Resource Development Grant Program, essentially it's for units of local government statewide. NGOs can only be the applicant for stream restorations that are federally cost shared through the NRCS EQIP program, but NGOs can also serve as project administrators on all of our projects on behalf of the local governments. So these are the 4 general types of projects that we provide cost share funding for. And I'm going to, the highlighted items below each of these are essentially the most common type of project under each category. And then for feasibility and engineering studies, we provide the same cost share funding that would go towards implementation of either a stream restoration, water management, or water-based recreation project. So we provide up to 50% cost share of non-federal project costs, and we max out at about a $200,000 grant award. So non-federal funding must comprise the applicant's 50% matching contribution requirement. We do allow federal funding to be used, but it can't be used to meet the match requirements. Instead, it can be deducted from the total project cost, which indirectly lowers the match requirement. And then we do allow for in-kind contributions that must be well documented, and it can include things like land transactions such as land donations or easements. So the application process, sorry for the cheesy animations, but basically check out our website. In order to engage me in terms of doing a preliminary site visit or whatever, we ask that a conceptual narrative and map be developed. We can schedule a site visit. You know, my job is to kind of help make the applicant's application as competitive as possible. Then you go ahead and submit an application. And then our awards range from $5,000 to up to $200,000. So we have 2 application cycles per year. We don't put out an RFP per se, but it's just a rolling January to June is our spring, July 1st to December 31st is our fall application cycle. If a project is recommended for funding by our I have 6 great colleagues who comprise our review team. the applicant will enter into a 2-year grant agreement with DEQ with the potential for up to a 1-year extension. This is probably the most important slide because this is how we evaluate every application. You can see it's very holistic. We're not just water quality focused, but we do focus on environmental benefits and environmental impacts in terms of those being weighted the highest in our scoring criteria. But we look at, lots of different factors. And if you were to look at our application spreadsheet, it lists all of this stuff out, and it even gives examples of, hey, what do we mean by social benefits or economic benefits?
Under a minute, Amin.
Thanks, Lauren. So this is our website. If you were to Google, the quickest way to get to it is just to Google Water Resources Development Grant. And this is our homepage. You can see really the goodies of our program are on the left side, and I've highlighted the featured project section, which is new. And you should check that out. That and the grant awards link will provide examples of projects that we've funded over the years. And this is our featured projects collective that is a list of, it shows the different types of projects that we have funded. These are kind of the featured ones, and it's in a story map format that provides pictures and maps and photos and even some videos of these projects. So this is the last slide. My contact information is in the top right. This Casheye River Treehouse project is probably one of the more popular projects that we funded over the years. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. And it's good to see a lot of y'all that I've been corresponding with over the years. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Lauren.
That's great. Thanks so much, Amin. Man, these are all such home runs. And we have one more presenter, Mr. Steve Bevington. Steve is, let's see, his bio says, Steve Bevington is the Restoration Program Manager for the NC Land and Water Fund. He oversees the distribution and administration of around $5 million in annual grants for stream and shoreline restoration, dam removal, innovative stormwater projects, and planning efforts. Steve spends time in Raleigh and an Ashe County office. So Steve, whenever you're ready, you're welcome to share your screen and take it away.
All right, thank you very much. I'm gonna hit the share button here, I hope. And did that pop up? I'm gonna make it bigger.
We see.
All right. Thanks for having me here. It's great to sort of meet with you all as we do virtually these days. What I'd like to just very quickly point out, the Land and Water Fund is our name. Legally, we're still both the Clean Water Management Trust Fund, our former name, and our new name. I point that out everywhere I go because clean water has a 25-year history in this state. We're now in the Division of Land and Water Stewardship, which is in the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. If you care later to Google us on the state legislature, see where we came from, our enabling legislation. I'll give you some background on how we came about and how we sort of changed sort of our purposes over the years. But essentially, we're really a program that is trying to improve water quality, ecological diversity, and also protect historic sites and military installations. We actually have $1 million special fund to buffer military installations and sort of keep their operations apart from other public services. But we do this through funding, and I'll get into this a little bit very quickly today, obviously, acquiring lands, restoring habitat, and enhancing water quality through stormwater efforts, and as I said, planning as well. This is just a quick reminder as the fifth speaker today. I thought I'd just throw out a tiny little brain teaser. This is a surveyor who surveyed a stream near Bologna in Italy. You might be guessing who it is already. It's Leonardo da Vinci. And my test at the end, there'll be a quiz, is if you picture the Mona Lisa, just in your mind, what is in the background that might interest me, or what might interest you? Very quickly, we have an annual grant cycle. We accept applications usually around the 1st of February. Application materials will be published in December. So later in my contact information, you'll see a website. You can just test that, and I'll get a hold of our listserv as well and put it in the chat later today. It takes us about 6 months to evaluate projects, and we do it through staff using a scoring system that's in place and available again on our website. One important difference, I think, between a lot of these programs you heard of today and us is that we are, all funding decisions are made by a board of citizens. They're appointed by the governor, state, senate, and the House, 9-member board, but they're citizens just like all of us, and they make the final call on what projects get funded once a year. So it's a little bit different approach. Some years in their 25-year history, we've been very independent. Other years, we're more directly under administrative processes like we are today in the Department of Natural Resources. We've had as much as $100 million. Usually it's around $20–25 million that's distributed. Keep your eyes on the state budget because there's been everything from same as last year, which is around 20 to $60 million proposed this year. I have no idea where it is, but we'll hopefully all know in a month or two. Our partners can really be any state agency, any local government, or any nonprofit that has specifically environmental concerns as its main focus. So we do have federal nonprofits that work with us, as well as local. You don't have to be in the state, you do have to do the work in the state as referred to the programs. I'll just leave this slide up for a second. Our first point of contact, sort of like Amin is the main contact. We have 2 field reps who split up the state east and west, more or less along I-77. Get a hold of them off our website or reviewing this. I'll flash through this. Out of the maybe $20 million we have to distribute this year, most of it goes to land protection. So about 75% of our work is really acquiring lands that are already in wonderful condition, buying stream buffers, buying historic properties, buying, as I said, areas along military buffers. We do about 20% or maybe $5 million a year in restoration projects, typically up to around $400,000. We do a small amount of innovative stormwater. We did a lot of stormwater in the past that was removed from our legislative directive several years ago. So we only do innovative stormwater projects these days. There's a lot of definition we can get into later about what is innovative. And we do planning, including the 9-point element plans. We tend to do 50 or so, $75,000 grants or less. Just really quickly, for land acquisition, we do stream buffers, natural heritage, greenway acquisition, and cultural and heritage projects. Our innovative stormwater projects, this one here down on Piper's Island, down the Duke Marine Center. But again, innovation can be in the eye of the beholder. So here, if you see this fish down here, is one of their stormwater features. And planning, I won't go through this too much today in the interest of time, but again, one real focus of ours is not just watershed planning, but 9-element plans if they enable applicants to seek other funding. Stream restoration is, yeah, 1 minute, that's perfect. Stream restoration is our main focus, but we do all sorts of different stream levels of enhancement. And I think 2 growth areas for us have been dam removal and shoreline restoration these days. I think you all know this. I'm going to skip through these in the interest of time. But I did want to point out that obviously there's no lack of opportunity in the state, unfortunately, for this. And as much money as we have, it goes very quickly in a very competitive process. And it doesn't have to be a giant mess like the last slides just showed, just denuded stream banks with no vegetation, or invasive species can be another area we do. I always like to remind people, take before and after pictures. The best way to do it is put a survey mark in there and take a picture from exactly the same place. It really pays off later. Before after pictures are difficult after construction when it's not really the same place, but if you set back, you can get a great look. Quick answer to our question. You can see here on the background, there's 2 streams in the Mona Lisa. I always like to point that out. There's a very fancy book by Nesky and Porcella in 2003 that really details what they think exactly the streams are. Centinela River is one of them, and you can see down here there's this causeway here and this causeway here they believe to be identical 500 years later. Anyway, there's my contact information. Great to speak with you all briefly today, and application materials and such are all available on our website, which I don't even have on the slide, so I'll put in the post. And I look forward to any questions you may have after this whirlwind tour. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Steve. That was great. And I am going to look up more information about that background in Mona Lisa. That was great trivia there too. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I'm going to hand it back over to Christy to take over for some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Steve and Amin and Kelsey. And I know Sarah had to jump off to another meeting, and Rishi, for those very concise and very interesting and informative overviews of your funding program. So I feel like I've been around for a while working on different watershed projects, but I learned something new about every one of those programs during this presentation. So good job. I know I saw at least one question in the chat. Michelle, do you have that question up?
I do. I think it was, it's going to be for Kelsey, I believe. And the question was, do tribal councils qualify for 205J?
Yeah, I had to look that up. It hasn't come up yet, but I know at least for like 319 grants, federally recognized tribes can apply for their own funding directly from the federal government. I was looking at 205J and it only mentioned states receiving funding, in which case I would think of a tribal council could apply as a regional council of government. But if there is a specific entity you know about who's interested, I'd be happy to look further into that for you and contact our EPA reps.
Great, thank you, Kelsey.
I think that was the only one that showed up in the chat, Christy. So
yeah, sure. We have a few minutes now. If there are any questions that that you think of, I'm asking our participants of our panelists. Now is a good time. You've got some time to ask direct questions, get to know them a little better.
Another question for Kelsey. Sometimes the watershed boundaries don't parallel with the COG regions. So can two COGs work together, or have you had any experience with that?
Yes, we've had two COGs work together in a project. There's usually still a lead who will handle the administration, and then the other COG can serve as a partner.
Great. And then a follow-up for Rishi, if I may. Where do all the impaired streams have these 9-element restoration plans? That was something I learned about today. Where do those reside?
The 9-element plans are already in our website, and we are updating. And if you have any specific question about the specific plan, if they are not updated in the website, we can double check in our record and we will let you know. Kelsey, do you want to add anything more about that? Because we are updating the 9-element plans in our website.
Yeah, I think you covered. Yeah, we need to update our map of the areas, but we're to keep that on the website and for the public.
Do either of you happen to have a link handy for where to find the map? Even though it's not 100% up to date, probably
Yes.
helpful.
Edgar, to clarify your question, are you asking who puts those together, or are you asking where you might be able to find which streams have 9-element plans associated with them?
Yeah, the more the latter, but
okay.
And who does put those together though, since you brought that up?
Those are mostly the responsibility of a champion. You know, Christy had mentioned earlier a watershed champion. So those 9-element plans and those watershed action plans are usually led at the local level. So it would be you as a river keeper could head up one. It could be another watershed group in your area. It could be the local government. It could be your county government or your municipality that heads that up. So Rishi, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
But we do, and primarily working with the Piedmont Triad Regional Council, we do have multiple watershed protection plans. So that's what we're talking about. I mean,
yeah,
those should have those 9 elements. I just never heard it put quite like that.
If you have already the watershed restoration plans and they are not specifically prepared for the purpose of 319 grant, you can go through the checklist of the 9 elements plans we provide to all the potential applicants, and you can to make sure that all the elements are covered. And you can send the original plan and the checklist and justify that this plan meets all the requirements. Then we will review, our experts will review and let you know that whether the existing plan will be eligible for the 319 grant.
Right, and so I hate to ask another question now, but how long or when do those plans become dated and have to be updated?
Oh, that's a great question, because some of our plans are older than 10 years, and this is very, you know, the plans are very like dynamic, and the situation, land use change and development, everything are changing. So we are struggling to update all the plans, and that's one of the big challenge for Kelsey and me. And if they are really old and they are not that much out of the context, then we will let you know. Otherwise, if they are fine, you will be eligible. Kelsey, did I miss anything?
No, we've had those conversations about how long is the static paper plan good for, and we're thinking around 10 to 15 years. They might be pretty out of date, but it depends on the context of the community. Some are more static than others.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Great questions. I think I saw another question in the chat pop up. Let me see.
You did, and it was from Ace, and he's asking what consideration or encouragement is incorporated through the process for using the free wetland engineers, the Keystone Beavers. And so I don't know who would be best to answer that question, but have any of your applicants tried to find a way to remove beaver dams or keep beaver dams intact or incorporate them into their planning process? Have any of you encountered that?
Let me jump in first, since we just had an applicant apply for a planning grant that would examine the feasibility of not using beavers, which is a great idea, but which I can get back to in a second, but simulating beavers with a beaver-like restoration. So sort of using their model, using their design, so to speak. So we're going to look at some of that. But quite often we are approached applicants come to us with questions about how to control beavers. And our general point of view is that they're a natural feature of the landscape, and in some ways can be very important to water quality. There's a few times where control has been allowed on our projects early in the process, just right after construction, to keep them away from new plantings. But the hope is once things become a natural buffer, obviously beavers will change that, but potentially not destroy it. So that's our feeling, is to let the beavers at it. We haven't had people come in and say we're going to introduce them on purpose, though. That would be a first for us.
Thank you, Steve.
And then another one just came through, if we have time, Christy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Does anyone have experience or advice on finding funding for oyster restoration projects for improving water quality? And this is from Adam Simon. So any oyster restoration projects that, Steve, have you funded any of those?
Yeah, the WRDG has not had any applications directly for oyster restoration. If oyster restoration can be incorporated into, say, a living shoreline project that had used the recycled oyster shells as sills to comprise the living shoreline, then that definitely could be incorporated in there, but not directly for oyster restoration.
Yeah, we do. It's the very same answer for Land and Water Fund, but we do have one planning project. I think it's in the Newport watershed to look at oyster restoration for water quality and for economic benefits, and that's run by the applicant in that case was the North Carolina Coastal Fed, who is hugely active in oyster restoration for all sorts of reasons, but has very broad coastal interest in that.
Yeah, and another thought would be through APNEC, the Albemarle Pamlico National Estuary Program. Stacy Fakin or Heather Boyette, I think would be good contacts for that, and I can put that in the chat. But AppNet would be a good group to check out with that for oyster restoration projects.
Thank you. Last call for questions of our speakers.
If I may, if no one else has one.
Sure, go
Sorry.
ahead, Edgar. No problem. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that one of the benefits y'all look for was to benefit state-owned property. What about state trails where the state may not own the property, but they're still part of the state park system?
That's a really good question. I'd have to look into a little bit. I don't know that the state statute that governs our program does not address that. So I would probably, if there was a potentially eligible project you had, then you just give me a little bit more information about it. I can consult with our legal counsel and get you a response. I definitely think it's possible.
Thanks, Amin. I want to give one more thank you to all of our speakers. And I am going to stop recording now since we will be moving into breakout groups for discussion. So